talk about a subject that I think really requires a little bit of clarity. And it's kind of an interesting one. It's vitamin D and Hashimoto specifically. And everybody comes in here has low vitamin D. So having done this for a long time, there was a time when it wasn't so well understood that low vitamin D was a problem, or what the problem was, or how it occurred. So people would come in with like vitamin D to be like, if the range in America is 30 to 100, people would come with a vitamin D of like 20, and the doctor was going, you need to get out in the sun more. I was like, but as we were in the earlier stages, in the group that I was involved in, I would say were some of the earliest functional medicine practitioners. We just kept seeing low vitamin D, low vitamin D, low vitamin D, low vitamin D, and to us, it just started to indicate that there's a connection between low vitamin D and chronic pain, and ultimately realizing that Hashimoto's was part of an awful lot of chronic conditions, chronic pain conditions, and that vitamin D had something to do maybe with immune inflammation, using it up, and that's what I've told people for years. And just recently, researchers are positing that vitamin D is low vitamin D. One of the reasons is that it's secondary to an inflammatory process that takes place in the body, and that this inflammation uses up vitamin D. So that's pretty close to what we've been saying for a long time. I'm guessing it's going to go one step further, and they're going to say it's autoimmune, because they're now saying that there's an association between low vitamin D and vitamin D polymorphisms. So let's talk about that real quick. People come in, they have Hashimoto's. First thing I asked them was, they have low vitamin D. Another thing, back then it was like, yeah, I had low vitamin D. I went to my doctor. I said, just take some pills. And back that time, it was like 450 milligrams a day. I mean, now doctors are giving 50,000 units of, which is like 20 times that, a week to their patients when they have low vitamin D. They're not quite sure why, but they're giving it to them. And so there are reasons that vitamin D goes low. One of the biggest reasons is what's called polymorphisms. So basically, a lot of times you have a problem with just genetically. You just genetically have a problem with processing and absorbing vitamin D. But what's interesting is now they're finding that there's a big association with people who have Hashimoto's and people who have vitamin D polymorphisms. So one of the reasons that your vitamin D may be low is because you have Hashimoto's and you have this polymorphism. You take 50,000 units, 6 weeks later you go to your doctor and your vitamin D hasn't moved a bit. And so that's something that person needs to be aware of, whose vitamin D isn't going up. And there are ways to address that, but you have to basically figure out what the triggers are for the Hashimoto's, get the Hashimoto's under control, and then it seems to improve absorption. But specifically, and there's the other reasons, by the way, that you won't absorb vitamin D. And this is relevant to Hashimoto's, as you're about to find out in a second. Is maybe you don't have a gallbladder. That gallbladder that for my entire lifetime has been kind of negligible, kind of a throwaway organ, kind of like, your gallbladder's got some stones in it, let's take it out. Okay, no big deal. It turns out now gallbladder does a lot more than just digest your fat-soluble vitamins, which is vitamin D. It does a lot of other things. It has a lot to do with your immune system, has a lot to do with pancreatic function, and so think twice about getting your gallbladder out. So vitamin D, if you don't have a gallbladder, or if you have a gallbladder that's not functioning well because your digestive chain is broken down, you're not going to break it down. It's a fat-soluble vitamin. And maybe you have a problem with the inside of your intestines that's inflamed. Maybe you have celiac. Maybe you have ulcerative Colitis, not so much because that's more downstream from where it's absorbed. But maybe you have SIBO, maybe you have oral tolerance problems. Maybe there's just a number of things you can have in there where you're just not going to absorb it. It's just going to go. It's going to go in. It's going to go out into the toilet. You're going to check your vitamin D 6 weeks later after taking 10,000 units a day, and you're going to go from 45 to 46 and go, what the hell's going on here? So, and a lot of that has to do with one of the reasons that would cause that type of a situation would be Hashimoto's thyroiditis, because Hashimoto's has a hypothyroid aspect to it. And so hypothyroid means it would slow down your stomach, it would slow down your gallbladder, it might slow down your intestines' ability to move, you might get constipation, that might alter your ability to digest your vitamin D. But I tell you all of that to tell you this. So there was a study that came out, and it was about vitamin D and its relativity to Hashimoto's. Now, I have had varying success with giving people high doses of vitamin D, and I'm not going to get into what that means, okay? But if you're the range of 30 to 100 is the range, I'd like to see you like right around 100. And whatever it takes to get that person there, whatever dose it takes to get that person there, that's my dose. Okay, and I've seen some really cool stuff happen. Sometimes just getting the vitamin D up. I've seen like inflammatory Hashimoto's symptoms get under control. Heart palpitations go down, inflammation in the throat go down. Well, it turns out that when you get vitamin D is a steroid, by the way. They call it a suck steroid, SUC, okay, steroid. You can look that up, and that's not SUCK, it's SUC steroid. And so, but you got to get it to a certain spot where it seems like it takes on this steroidal effect. So what they have found, that I was reading a study out of a bunch of notes that I got at a seminar on Hashimoto's. And the study showed that once you got vitamin D up into a high normal range, that it could, so your TSH, your thyroid stimulating hormone, if it goes high, you have hypothyroid, right? It is shown one of the things that it will do is it can, at high doses, in not everybody, but in a percentage of Hashimoto's patients, it can work to bring that thyroid stimulating hormone down to normal. It's a complex situation to explain the whole thing, but basically the person has inflammation, it's damaging their thyroid, the thyroid's vomiting out T3 and T4, which are thyroid hormones, while the destruction is taking place. And the person's, and then that's affecting all of their numbers in different ways. And the vitamin D brings down the inflammation. That helps to normalize that situation. So vitamin D can do that. Now, there's two markers that tell us whether you have Hashimoto's or not. One's called the thyroid peroxidase antibody marker, TPO. A lot more people are familiar with that today. Most people are not as familiar with the anti-thyroglobulin marker. Usually they run both. If a person has Hashimoto's, about 90% of the time they're going to find out more from the TPO, the thyroid peroxidase. It's just more sensitive. It's an enzyme. The anti-thyroglobulin marker is it's a whole different animal. And it only shows up. It's a small percentage of the time. I want to say 3, 7. I don't even think it reaches 10% of the time that it shows up. So, but when it shows up, it's like, wow, okay, we have Hashimoto's. Okay. So high doses of vitamin D have been also shown to lower the antibodies against anti-thyroglobulin markers. Thyroglobulin, so those are thyroid proteins. Okay, those are like the matrix. Those are like what your thyroid is made of. Whereas the other one is an attack against enzymes that make the hormone. This is like an attack against your actual thyroid. And so high doses of vitamin D have also been shown to alter the anti-thyroglobulin, but not the other one, but but not the thyroid one, the TPO, which is the immune system attacking your enzymes that make your T4 and T3 and make you jittery and stuff like that. So vitamin D is a very, we recognized early on that vitamin D was low in everybody, the group that I know I was involved with, and then started really dosing it up, and started seeing some dramatic changes in not everybody, but certain patients, enough to go, whoa, okay, there's a connection here. Started to realize that maybe the vitamin D was low because they had autoimmunity. Indeed, I think it's where the research is probably leading. They're going to probably, because researchers, they don't just put that in their research. They have to go and do another research project and establish it and so on and so forth. I think that's probably coming. When I look at somebody and their vitamin D is 16, and it should be really way up in the upper range, closer to like 85 to 100 or something like that, I automatically am like, okay, you have autoimmunity until proven innocent. So vitamin D, here's what I wanted to do. I wanted to dispel the myth of I'm not getting enough sun. All right, you don't need that much sun to get enough vitamin D to kind of make things happen. Vitamin D it has a lot to do with calcium metabolism, and people say, oh, you got to get out more. That's why you're getting osteoporosis. That's why calcium is. It's not that. I have people that come in here who they're horse trainers. They're outside all day long. They're what do you call them? Lifeguards. They're lifeguards. I have people come in here lifeguards, and they're coming in and they're tan, and their vitamin D is like 10. So they're either having these polymorphisms, they have a bad gut, they have a bad thyroid, they have autoimmunity. It's one of these other things, and so that. But I see that pretty much across the board. So it's easy to have a good laugh and explain that to the lifeguard. Okay, but a lot of times people are just like, no, we're not on the right parallel, and I need to get out there in more sun. Let me tell you, with you, if you have Hashimoto's and you're watching this, it's not about that. It is about either the inflammation that they're talking about, or it's about the polymorphism that seems to be now related heavily to Hashimoto's itself. Is that causing Hashimoto's? Is Hashimoto's causing that? It's probably a vicious cycle. They're working on which one causes the other, but you don't need to know in that much detail to be able to help people to understand that they need to get their vitamin D up, and then if it doesn't get up, kind of figure out why and fix that. So I think those are the salient points about vitamin D that I wanted to bring to you today. Those are ones I still keep getting a lot of confusion from the people that I treat and consult with on that topic, and it's so common that I just thought it would be a good one to do. So that's it for today, vitamin D and Hashimoto's.